Well, hi everyone. The day is upon us almost. The Iowa Caucus is the that we've all been waiting for a long time, and it'll be the first time that Andrew Yang is actually on a ballot. And I, a long time ago, when I first heard Yang, I remember thinking to myself, the person who takes this lane, um, not just in terms of important in terms of approach is going to be the person who can beat Donald Trump. Because, I mean, look, the reason that Trump got elected in the first place, and the thing that, frankly, I'll admit it, that I like about the guy is that I know who he is. Like, what really bothered me about Hillary is that her lies weren't even her lies, if that makes sense. We kind of know what Trump is about. And on the other hand, Yang has done something that is truly incredible. And that is that I could go over to the Young Turks office and talk about Andrew Yang, and they would say, "Oh, yeah, Andrew Yang, he's great." And then I go down and talk to people who are totally conservative and stuff like that, and they somehow consider him to be one of the moderates. And what's so weird about it is that his proposals are actually they're pretty radical in a sense, but it's not radical in the sense of it being uh, it's radical in that it might actually work, right? So things like Medicare for all or whatever, they it sounds really good, and I think that maybe there's some way that that could happen, but the actual price tag that comes on it, if you look at it, it's just untenable. Yang has the kind of mind where he's had to live in the real world. You know, Bernie Sanders, as much as I like the guy as a dude, when they ask him, how are you actually going to do this? His answers are really clunky. And you know, to me, it's like if you can't come up with a plausible mechanism for doing something, then what are you even doing? Yang has the good sense of being kind of having that healthy Gen X kind of cynicism. That you know the Gen Xers, you know, everybody always sort of the generation before them, you tend to kind of see their flaws. Like a lot of the Zoomers that are coming up, they see all the problems with my generation, the millennials, and you know the Gen Xers came up in the wake of all the baby boomer nonsense, and that's where you get you get Nirvana and grunge and kind of this Nine Inch Nails, all this kind of dark, like cynical stuff, because a lot of the things from the 1960s, a lot of the boomers' ideas clearly didn't work. Like it led into an era that was kind of the 70s were kind of a cynical time. And I think that and Andrew, again, he was like a punk guy. This is a guy who understands tragedy, and ignoring tragedy does not make it go away. Pretending that you can do untenable things, um, it doesn't help anything. As a matter of fact, it's likely to just make things worse. And that's one of the things I think people misunderstand about a lot of conservatives. Most conservatives, the reason they don't want to change certain things, or they don't want to, for example, have Medicare for all or whatever, is because they know that there's a difference between the idea of something and actually making it happen and having it be tenable. So for me, the biggest thing is whatever you do, you have to say, you have to have a sense of tragedy, to take the tragic vision. I'm a big fan of what I would call tragic liberalism. This is like the ideology that I would identify with, which is to say, Thomas Sowell, the author, who, by the way, he's probably the greatest conservative thinker of the last 50 years. And a lot of you probably know who he is. He's a black man who grew up in Harlem and stuff like that. And there's no doubt in my mind, if he were on the left, I think he would be, maybe the biggest name out there. But because he's kind of a libertarian conservative type, that isn't really the case, although he's come up a lot on YouTube. But he's really one of these guys where you hear that it's not that people don't want things to be better. Like that, it's not that people don't want there to be folks who can't afford healthcare and stuff like that. It's literally that, as Sowell points out in a lot of his works, oftentimes the things that people do to try to make those things happen, what actually comes of it is often something that's worse. And Sowell talks about there being the essential divide between liberals and conservatives, or the left and the right, is what vision of the world you have. So he associates conservatism with the tragic vision, which is essentially to say that we live in a fallen world, in essence, that life is it's a tragic place. It's not perfectible. And then the other one is the vision of the anointed, or the unconstrained vision, which is to say that that the world can be perfected, that you can come up with the right systems in order to make things perfect. Now, I, for one, believe that you can make systems better, obviously. But if you are under the delusion that simply wishing something to be is going to make it happen, you're just going to, pave the road to hell, as it were. And so Andrew, he has the good sense of understanding that we live in a tragic world. He has the mindset that allows him to pragmatically look at systems and understand that most of the time, if you change something, you're just going to break it. And that happens often, or you're going to create new problems. Instead, he tries to get down into the details of how can we really make this thing work. And my point in all of this is that something crazy has happened, that I have not met a person, left, right, or center, who genuinely, with the exception of hardcore ideologues, who do not like Andrew Yang. And what's so telling is that even conservatives, when I hear them talk about Yang, they say that he is one of the more moderate candidates. And I think I've realized that really what that is, when they say moderate, is that he doesn't seem like he's their enemy. He doesn't think they're his enemy. He isn't leaning into the most sort of tribal, divisive rhetoric, which I believe is primarily used to, consciously or not, I think it's essentially used to keep people divided, right? So people that are conservative, because he sees acknowledges that, like, you're going to actually need to figure out the details of how to make something work. You can't just say, oh, like, we'll just snap our fingers and make it happen. We'll just use this magical, machine that that this theory that's in my mind is going to be what is. But also he sees he's not trying to just continue the same systems that we have now, but just spout rhetoric that is meant to appeal to certain groups of people and make them feel good, and then push the other group of people away. Because that's what happens. That's, as long as we're in this situation where we're uh, so focused on rhetoric rather than ideas, and so focused on this day-to-day, gotcha bullshit, then we're not going to get anywhere. And Yang, from everybody, from I've heard Tucker Carlson be like, I disagree with this guy's ideas, but it's obvious he's completely genuine. And then I've heard people, on the Young Turks, like, Cenk and Anna and all those guys have also said, like, I think that maybe this is the wrong approach here. But and they have their concerns, but he seems like a really genuine guy. And everybody, nobody seems to be terrified that this is some guy who secretly is, like conspiring to do, something awful. It's a guy who has literally he's put his money where his mouth is. Not only can people tell he's genuine in the way that Trump was seen as genuine, because that dude, he's genuinely Trump, okay? Like, whatever it is, he is who he is. But the guy, before he did all of this, was doing venture for America. Like, it was something he actually, believed in. And there's nothing about his life that is, as far as I know, and I just don't get the sense that it's going to be, it turns out he's a total phony, and, there's all these like skeletons in his closet. I just don't see it. The beauty of Yang is that Yang hasn't come to the place that he's at because he believes in fairy tales. Yang is a guy who has the good sense to accept the tragic vision and understand that there's only so much you can do, but then understanding that humans do have a nature and we are flawed and that you can't really perfect things. But from that place, if people are really honest with each other and work together and actually listen to, conservatives and libertarian types who have criticisms of bureaucracies getting bigger, or of money just getting sucked up into bureaucracies or whatever it is, and all of it just disappearing. Like in LA. LA is a very liberal place, and there are all kinds of bureaucratic mechanisms at play that are supposed to be doing all of these different things, and yet LA is a total mess. It is a total mess. Like a lot of the cities that have, some of the most liberal policies, there's some of my favorite places. I almost always live in liberal spots. They tend to have a lot of innovation and, entrepreneurship and art and all those kinds of things. And they do tend to have like good social services and stuff like that. But there's also just basic problems where, just if you have two eyes, you can see, hey, there's like a lot of problems here. A lot of things just don't work. You can't even keep the streets clean. If you want to open a business here, you're going to be going through all this kind of regulatory red tape. And look, there's a reason we have regulations, man. There's a reason we have all this stuff. But the fact of the matter is that any institution that is given that sort of power, once that institution is there, its purpose is to perpetuate that institution. Okay? Like, that's part of what it has to do. And so there's always going to be, the proof is in the pudding. If you've gone to a lot of the most liberal cities, as great as they are in a lot of ways, there are a lot of problems with them too. And so Yang seems to be aware of that and understanding that if you just, create another bureaucracy in the federal government and make that even bigger, not all of a sudden that isn't going to fix all of our problems. Just, raising taxes and, throwing it into the same stuff, Or, what is the government good at, essentially? Like, have you been to the DMV and stuff and all of that? Like, most of the government run places aren't really that great, frankly. And if somebody were able to come along and say, hey, this is how we can make the federal government more efficient, and had specific plans for it, I would be all about it. I'm about results, man. And I think that luckily, Yang, he has the heart of a liberal, so to speak, or heart of a progressive. But he has the sensibility of a technocrat, of a conservative. I think he is the exact thing that people need right now. And there are a lot of people who aren't caught up in the day to day, like a lot of people watching this might be, like me, who at the end of the day, they can just see, oh, this guy is clearly genuine and his ideas are really interesting. And he doesn't look down on me for thinking something different. He's somebody who understands the situation that we're in, and instead of sitting there talking about how we're going to bring people together and stuff like that, he doesn't make those sweeping moralizations. It's obvious that he believes that through the policies he's pursuing and the way he approaches things. So I've been saying for some time now, I guess probably a year now at this point, he's just going to keep going up. And to me, when oh, I see. Somebody says Andrew Yang is the only candidate looking to change this. Yeah, no, totally. He has systemic changes that might actually work. And they're systemic changes that, like, again, when I tell a conservative, and this is insane, if I tell a conservative or a libertarian about some of these proposals, they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Because again, the reason most conservatives or libertarians are that way is not because of this straw man, boogeyman, they just want to do, they're all about greed and, racism or like whatever it is. It's like, of course, I mean, those things are going to be there. You could say that about anybody because again, I take the tragic vision. I think there's darkness in all of us, man. Like, it doesn't matter where you go, and if you think it's not in you, then you're scarier than most people. So instead, like, his plans factor in the conservative concerns about things, which is things about efficiency and about like the practical elements of all of these sorts of things. How are you actually going to do it? What is driving you? Is it creating solutions, or is it ultimately kind of playing to the ideology of the people who are following you, and giving favors to certain groups or whatever it is? So I think, can you imagine if Andrew Yang got on stage with Donald Trump? What is Trump going to do? Right? Trump was able to get where he is in large part because a lot of the people in Washington, certainly a lot of the major politicians or anyone that he was going to go up against, his cynicism works and his like fiery Trumpiness works because he's going up against someone like a Hillary Clinton, right? To where, it's obvious she isn't really saying what she believes a lot of the time. I mean, it just, you can just feel it just intuitively. And Trump would, he calls people about that stuff. It's easy to, just the fact that he is authentically a scumbag is better than pretending that you're, this paradigm of virtue. But secretly, you have just the most cynical beliefs possible and are covering up for just some of the worst dregs that are out there. And the more we learn about this establishment class and all these, things that apparently they've been getting away with for a long time, things that were called conspiracies, the more Trump seems to be one of the only folks who, at least that guy is who he is, you know? And there's also a kind of, on some level, his distance from certain policies, like he isn't just kind of caught up in the weeds. He's able to look at things in a very kind of simple, um, almost the simplicity of the way he views certain things and just how about like the way power works and intimidation and getting people on your side and stuff. It sort of works. It's like with Iran, I'm going to get back to Yang in a second, but with the whole thing with Iran, the guy clearly doesn't want to go to war with Iran. It's one of the best things about Trump. I think he genuinely, the reason you say whatever it is, I don't really care what the reason is. I think he doesn't want to go to war with Iran. And so he's been, has sort of put up with a lot. But when he ultimately took out Soleimani, to me, that was him saying, look, you better fucking back off. Because and the thing is that Trump is someone that you never know. He is unpredictable. People don't know what he's gonna do. So if he goes out and all of a sudden takes this very targeted, aggressive military action, that's kind of him saying, look, man, don't just come in. Don't think I'm not gonna fuck with you if you keep messing with us. So the simplicity of some of what he does, and this is just very kind of animalistic stuff. Like if you're being nice and then you just punch someone in the face real quick and then say, hey, back off, they're likely to listen to you. And I mean, that is a kind of a cynical way of looking at things, but it kind of is what it is. However, in a situation where Donald Trump is on stage with Andrew Yang, Donald Trump is now completely stripped of one of his greatest assets, and that he attacks, right? He knows how to attack. But can you imagine what it'd be like to attack Andrew Yang? To me, most people would just find it mean. A lot of people don't have sympathy for someone like a Hillary Clinton or if Biden was up there or whatever it is. You could call out their corruption. You could call out this stuff. But what is he going to do with Yang? The only things I could think of would be things that be like, dude, why are you being an asshole? So it's going to come down to, and literally even amongst people who are, there'll always be exceptions. There will be some people who like Trump no matter what, but it's like if he were to just be a total dick and just attack Yang or start making up stuff about him or whatever it was, I think Trump knows this. People would be like, he's just being a total jerk to this guy. Why don't you win it on? And the thing is, he can't really. I don't think he could beat Yang in terms of on ideas. And although I don't think Trump's ideas or his policies are nearly as bad as the media often portrays them, when I look at them, I'm like, really, this is what you're freaking out about? But the thing is that I don't think Trump is going to ultimately solve the problems that need to be solved either. He's not that kind of guy. The beauty of a Yang presidency would be the fact that I think he is one of the only people where if he got in there, I think the country collectively, based on what I've seen, would be like, let's see what this guy's got. The combination of being someone who has the technical wherewithal and the analytical wherewithal, as well as clearly the marketing and just the creativity. Like the fact he's been able to do what he's done using the internet, getting people like me to donate to his campaign, and now to be on a live stream, like really right now, like trying to push for this, because I so want someone who is pragmatic but knows what needs to be changed and clearly has good intentions. Good intentions by themselves, who cares? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. But good intentions um, matched with that technical wherewithal, that's incredible. And I think that people have said, Jordan Peterson said, or there's this mythological thing that the fool is the precursor to the savior. Now, whether or not Trump is a fool or not, or Andrew a savior, so to speak, I won't really get into that. But there is something about this moment where everything seems so absurd that I think we're just ripe for someone to come in and says, okay, guys, like not in a condescending way. He's just like, okay, now it's time for an adult to come in the room. And the person who is an adult and principled and stuff like that isn't going to come in and be holier than thou. He's not going to come in and think, he's better than everybody and he's this savior messiah guy. The people who are actually able to do stuff like that do have a sense of humility and have a sense that, I understand where you're at. I understand that you're angry. And again, it goes back to having that sense of tragedy, of not living in this fantasy world, of understanding how dark the world can be, and understanding the darkness within yourself even, but then living your life in such a way to where that is not what defines and drives you. And at the end of the day, Americans really appreciate people who are genuine and are well-intentioned. I'm convinced that, for example, I think it's because that he's genuine. I think that the fact that he hasn't really ever gotten much of anything done, and doesn't, and the specifics of his plans, it's clear he just kind of thinks these things in the abstract, that we have enough money in this country to do A, B, and C. It's like, well, maybe we do, but simply signing, but it's not easily done. If it was easily done, then people would have done it by now. I think he just thinks, you just call people greedy, or I don't know, like even something like the federal jobs guarantee. Like that's one of the things that sounds good on paper, but if you go and actually try to implement it, it's going to be something much different. It's going to be something much different. And so that's really where, for me, reading somebody like Thomas Sowell, or really getting engaged in conservative thought, along with the liberal thought and the progressive thought that I, having gone to school in San Francisco and just sort of being in a pretty liberal industry and stuff, I'm well aware of. But I think there is this middle path that has emerged, and it's not the middle in that it's watered down. It's, I think, people who are tired of viewing the world in this tribal sense, viewing politics in this tribal sense, and are just saying, okay, how can we actually make this stuff work? And in Iowa, right now, I think, I think there's going to be a lot more people voting for Yang than any of the pundits are guessing. Because I'm convinced that at the end of the day, most Americans really just want somebody that they can trust, and that genuinely seems to not be playing games with them. I'm so sick of these games. It's so cynical. It's so cynical, a lot of what's been going on here. And Yang has managed to thread the needle in such an incredible way. Like, how is it that there are so many people who voted? I mean, according to the media narrative, it doesn't surprise me at all. How is it that so many people who like Trump are would be totally stoked on Andrew Yang? How is it that when I talk to even my most conservative friends or whatever, they're like, yeah, I like Yang. How is it that anybody I know, other than the most hardcore of ideologues, and there would almost be a problem if there wasn't somebody who didn't like Yang. It's like the people who don't like him are the ones that are just completely in tribal mode. The only thing they can see is, they view everything in terms of the media narrative. And just the fact that it's the folks who, for example, got mad at him for the fact that he brought up that, I think he tweeted out a New York Times article about how the age of, that white men were killing themselves and, en masse or something. And it's just like, he tweets that out and then he got like accused of white nationalism. That's been the weirdest like attack on the dude. Um, like what? And so is being worried about people in the heartland who are hurting economically and are literally killing themselves. Um, you know, that's a bad thing. It's amazing how cynical people can be and how callous they can be towards individuals who, in this case, are generally speaking so nobody talks about, working class, dudes, like middle-aged dudes who don't really feel like they have a purpose. One of the only types of bigotry, and that's what it um, is that you can make fun of folks who like working class folks in the middle of the country. It's it's gross. It's like that thing that happened on CNN. It's just like any stereotype, it's just like it's so reductive, and it speaks to the ignorance of the person who's doing it more than anything. And it also completely undercuts to me, this notion that people are trying to be, they're so woke and want such good things for people. To me, if you're talking about what a great person you are all the time, that's normally a red flag. Because like if you really look at yourself, you're probably not that great, you know? But you're striving for it. You want to try to be good. And so I think as a country, we should be setting up incentives that allow people to play to their better instincts. And I think, it could well be that at the end of the day, whether it's this election or some other, that the success of the Yang campaign, and the things that have happened in regards to Trump that have exposed the media, and their biases, and now everybody sees it. Like more and more people are seeing the way they're treating Sanders, the way they're treating Yang, and be like, oh, these people suck. Like, I think that the more people see this, and the more momentum Yang gets, I think that we are going to see this stupid, what I call the phantom divide. This idea of division, I think that the division that's there is mostly a division that exists in people's minds, which is to say, the idea of who the people on the other side of the aisle are and what they believe is just that. It's an idea. It's the result of people who haven't really engaged with people who actually hold the beliefs that they're in opposition to, but instead, just kind of stay in their little bubbles, which may be much more racially diverse. It may be, a lot of different things, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm in Southern California. You have everybody. Like the circle that I, swim in, so to speak, you have people of all kinds of different races, but and sexual orientations and stuff like that. But ideologically, it's like there's a lot of similarities. And the thing is that even here, if you were to come and take like a really rational conservative argument to, the folks here and vice versa, everybody would listen. We're really not that divided. A lot of it is these tribal ideas that have been just sort of turned over and over and over and have been used to kind of stoke this division. So just your neighbor, whoever they are, whoever's on, in another state or whatever it is, invariably I find once you go there, you're just around people, no matter what they believe, pretty much what you find out is like, oh, it's people. It's and I think, generally speaking, Americans, and like, look, I don't know, what do I know? But I've found Americans are actually, like, generally speaking, quite accepting people. I don't think we're this like really just hateful thing. I think that the people that everybody is imagining in their heads, like here, I have people who are, they talk about, liberals, this, and that, and somehow there's just this thing in their head that is some combination of veganism and transgender issues and hating America and socialism, and like it's just all this kind of stew of things that are just associated with them. And so if you mention just a liberal issue, for example, all of a sudden you become one of them, and and people get really defensive, and everybody does that. Everybody does that. I've had situations where I've spoken about, for example, like on immigration. Immigration is it's like, clearly it's not either, well, you have like completely basic, essentially open borders, or you keep everybody out. And it's not either, these are all innocent, great, wonderful people who should be here and they'll just all enrich our society and everything will be better, or it's that these are awful, people who are coming here and they're criminals and stuff like that. Both of these ideas are just pure ignorance. And I think most people understand that. Most people understand that. And they're willing to give people a chance and really look at issues. We understand each other's common humanity. Like, I really do believe that. But I think the question is, like, what is the best way? What is the most fair way to approach these issues? I don't want to take anybody and just throw them under the bus and say, screw you, racist, blah, 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 or whatever, just reduce people to these caricatures. Because if you go and be with people, people are not caricatures. They're fully fleshed out human beings like anyone else. So I think that everything that's happening right now, I think Yang, as I've said before, and I've been saying for a year now, he's just going to keep going up. And I think that tomorrow he will outperform expectations. And I certainly hope I'm not going to even say how high it could go, but I think he's going to seriously outperform expectations. And by the way, did you guys hear about they didn't release the most recent Des Moines Register? It was the Des Moines Register. It's the big Iowa paper. They didn't release their poll because they came up with some weird excuse. Like, I don't remember what it was, but to me, what it said was the establishment doesn't like the results. I would assume that amongst those things would be that it's going to be the Bernie Sanders and the Andrew Yangs who are all of a sudden have a bunch of momentum. And one thing about momentum is that if all of a sudden somebody spikes in a poll like Andrew has been, which by the way is aided in big part to for example, like Dave Chappelle coming out. Like Dave Chappelle coming out and saying something, that's pretty much saying Dave Chappelle he's a smart dude and he gets it. That's one of the most like insightful dudes out there. He's not some guy giving his opinion on Twitter, every day and just sort of parroting talking points. Like he's a super thoughtful guy. And not easily, pigeonholed politically either. You know, He's like a real thinker. But I would imagine that poll, that Des Moines Register poll, whatever was there was something the establishment doesn't like. And that means that they're scared of the momentum. Now, right now it's probably going to be, Sanders who gets it just because he's like so far ahead. But when Yang winds up getting a substantial portion of the vote and outperforms, and people start saying, hey, like, what's up with this guy? Not only is he a guy who I think has more of what it takes to be a good president than Bernie does, just simply because he has a track record of getting things done, of knowing how to get things done, and has a technocratic edge to him where it's not just everybody should have health care. You know what I'm saying? Like it's he knows how are we going to do it? What are the potential downfalls and all that kind of thing? Like what are the actual mechanisms? He's crossed the T's and dotted the I's. And Yang hasn't embraced a lot of the really the issues that are used to divide people, which are mostly these kind of social issues, that unfortunately take people's eye off the things that actually matter. We have real problems in this country that a lot of people agree on. Like we have to address this, and that, right? But we get divided by these dumb, stupid things, and Yang isn't caught up in that. Yang is he's sticking to the things that matter. And look, the mere fact that the media doesn't seem to like Yang, well, they can't really dislike him because it's very hard you can't really demonize that guy, right? But they do ignore him. And anybody that the media ignores, immediately with conservatives, they're like, okay, what's this guy about? Because they don't trust the media at all. And increasingly, this is becoming, as you're saying, okay, people are tribal in nature. Yeah, we are tribal. I don't think there's a way of getting around tribalism. I think that's always going to be there. I think that what we can do is try to mitigate against it as much as we can. And luckily, I think there are enough of us who will try to if we come at this the right way and just stay on message, focus on helping to solve the problem that have got us to where we are at. And if we just stick to that stuff and focus on our common just stick to the issues and don't be a dick. Don't assume that people are just like have terrible motives, right? Then I think that Yang has a real shot. And regardless of any of that, I think Yang is changing in the way that Trump changed American politics in a lot of ways. Which, for example, like tweeting, having the president tweet, as much as the media doesn't like it, and regardless of what you think about how Trump tweets, it's actually kind of good that the president can speak directly to the people. That's actually pretty cool. And it kind of maybe it took someone like a like a Trump, somebody who's just such a brash, you know, um, dude, um, who would able to do something like that. So I want to see Andrew Yang continue to tweet when he's in office. He'd probably tweet in a very different way, but in the same way that Andrew has not needed to come out and be a dick and attack people because he has people behind him who all of us. It's Yang Gang. Like from the very beginning, when MSNBC, Yang came out and said, um, "Yay, my mic was off," and then Yang Gang was like, we're not having that, right? So if Yang just says all he needs to do is say honestly what's going on to the people, and we'll take it from there. In the United States, the people still have a lot of power. They really do. And the thing is that if we are reasonable and are not just, the problem is the man, or what we need to do is take down the government and everything will magically be better. No magical thinking. We have to like stay with the tragic view of things, and that things aren't magically just going to get better if you put this person in there who shares your ideology. We have to be really judicious and practical the way that Yang is, and allow him to make sure that we have a coalition of people which really can be across the aisle, where if he says he has like a problem, oh well, I can't do A, B, or C, that this is the reason that I can't get this passed, or whatever it is, people will show up because we believe in him, we trust him. And one person alone in the Oval Office by themselves, who has to communicate through surrogates and all of this, can only do so much. But somebody who is there, that has the support of all of us behind him, and is not trying to play us for suckers, but who is soberly looking at a situation and trying to figure out the best way forward, and is willing to be honest with the American people about what the obstacles are for him. There are going to be so many people behind him who are different political persuasions that are going to make sure that Washington needs to bend. They're going to need to bend on certain issues. And the thing is that I don't think any of us want to do anything stupid or unreasonable. I don't think that the Yang Gang and everybody who I think eventually will be part of it. It is not these ideological, rabid, rage-filled, folks. It's people who like really just like, how do we fix this, guys? How do we figure this out? What are we going to do? How are we going to adapt to the 21st century? And what can we actually do practically? So this is getting pretty long here, but I will be watching very closely the Iowa caucuses, and I think he's definitely going to get delegates. I don't know how many, but that's going to happen. And yeah, I think this is going to be really cool. You think 3 to 4? I think that would be great. I think that's possible. Yeah, but whatever it is, he's going to get a significant portion of the vote, and the more that happens, the more people are going to start paying attention. And I think all you really have to do to get people on Andrew Yang's side, so to speak, is normally just have people. Uh, you pray for okay, maybe. Let's see. Um, yeah, I think this is going to be really cool. And regardless of what happens, guys, I'm convinced that this is all pushing us in a really positive direction. And I think the way Yang Gang has approached all of this and the kinds of people who are getting behind it, um, it all starts from the top. And I think that if you have a good, strong, principled leader, um, who's like not an ideological creep, that everything else follows. And everybody I've met who's like, behind Yang Gang, it's, they just seem to be really solid people. Um, but anyways, if you're in Iowa or, New Hampshire coming up, like, God bless you all. And I hope you have the fortitude to stay out there. And I think in a caucus, people are stoked about Yang. People are stoked about him, and you need to be stoked in a caucus setting. So I would love. Okay, what's my idea for a Yang VP pick? Katie Porter. Man, I actually don't. I don't know enough about Katie Porter. I'll look her up. Who would that be? I think there's two ways that you could go if you're Yang. You could either get someone else who kind of thinks outside the box, or you could do something and feel good about themselves. Like, could you imagine like if Yang picked like Hillary as the VP? I'm not saying that'd be a good idea. I think that she'd probably just, kind of subvert him the whole time and try to stab him in the back. But at the same time, it's like keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I don't know. But that's a discussion for another time. And by the way, I think if nothing else, I'm convinced that um, anybody who doesn't pick Yang as the VP is a fool. If it doesn't go that way, I think for some of these guys, it's the only way that they even stand a chance is by having Yang as the VP pick, and then having and emphasizing how prominent a role that he would be taking. But obviously, that's not what we're going for right now. We're trying to actually win this thing, and I think that we can. He's just going to keep going up, and I think that will be reflected tomorrow. Anyways, I will certainly check in with everybody once we have the results, and I'm really looking forward to this. Whatever comes of it, I think it's going to be a very good thing for the country. Um, so yeah, it's nice talking to y'all, and I will check in soon. Bye.